This program was brought to you by Koller Institute of Venture at Tel Aviv University.
This weekend, just this past weekend, both Harvard and MIT released their impact studies. And the timing couldn't be more relevant. Maybe you had something to do with it, Yesha. You have contacts in Boston. But they're actually very interesting. I'm happy to share the links with anyone who wants to look at the full studies. They don't look at exactly the same parameters, but the four that are up here are the ones that they both looked at. And interestingly, of course, you know, the numbers at the bottom are rather nice when you think that the impact is similar to the economy of Germany in the case of Harvard or Russia in the case of MIT. Now, they measure the impact of companies founded by alumni. They measure in that companies like Microsoft and Facebook on the Harvard side, Intel and others on the MIT side. One can argue as much as one wants with the data, but that's not the point of this exercise. The point is to say universities are looking to measure their impact around the world, be it economic, be it in terms of knowledge, be it in terms of teaching. And what I found particularly interesting is that Harvard, not MIT, measured something else. It's the first time I've seen this measured. And this is their impact in voluntary work around the world. Harvard has roughly 380,000 alumni. MIT has about 130,000 alumni that they looked at. 116,000 of the Harvard alumni, so that's almost the same number as the total number of the MIT alumni, are engaged in voluntary work. They do 1.6 million hours of work a month. That translates to almost 6,600 full-time jobs. And I think that's an interesting parameter to look at, because we're all used to looking at the venture side and the financial side. As a long-term venture capitalist and a tech transfer expert, I'm used to looking at that as well, and I will talk about that a little. But I think that's something to bear in mind maybe for the groups, for the discussion later on. I know it's close to the hearts of some of the people sitting in the audience. What is your impact economically, in terms of knowledge, but also what is your impact in terms of what you impart to your students? The rector spoke a lot about what you impart and how you impart to your students and what their footprint is in society moving on. Now, we do a reasonably good job in Israel in tech transfer, okay? In taking the knowledge that has been developed at our universities and turning it into successful companies, successful products. We have a vibrant ecosystem. I'm not going to give you the Startup Nation lecture, not today. But I pulled out this slide. I use this all over the world, and these are some of, you know, we all know some of the best known products developed in Israel. And I did the following exercise, which is to look at how many of these were the product, the direct product of inventions discovered at Israeli academic institutions. And not surprisingly, it is in fact the majority of the products on this list. And all the other companies are also founded by graduates. If we use the Harvard or MIT method, they'd all be under this list. But these are companies that actually use technology developed in some form or another at academic institutions and moved them forward. The other interesting bit of information, and again, I know that I have colleagues, my successor at Yisum, colleagues from the Technion, from Tel Aviv University, from Beersheva, from the Weizmann Institute, so I didn't use any data that's provided by one of the institutions, but rather this is data that was compiled by the Central Bureau of Statistics 1 year ago. It relates to numbers from 2012, but that is the most recent, most objective data we have, comparing Israel, the UK, the US, and Japan. And this also shows that we have a relatively good position around the world. I won't read out the numbers to you. I do want to highlight two numbers on the next slide, which I've done here in red. And that is, this is normalized for R&D expenditure. So this is supposed to be more comparable data. Again, it's statistics. I hope there are no statisticians in the room. Not my favorite topic. But it does give an idea of what we do on the whole better than others. And it's a quantification of some of the things that both the rector and the president mentioned before. Number one, we patent, on average, between 1 and 2 times this as other countries when you look at the number of patents filed. But we license significantly higher numbers of those, which is a tribute to the way we do tech transfer in this country, and probably also a tribute to the connection between the universities and society, which is the main topic I want to highlight. The second thing where we stand out is, of course, the revenues. I believe this number is incorrect. I believe the correct number is over $500 million a year in actual revenues for the relevant years, but this is the number that they had on the slide, so I won't argue with it. But suffice it to say, we're doing better than most. Now, why is that? The world has moved from, and I will actually use this next one, from a traditional university licensing model, which essentially says, we've worked in our labs, we've developed this product, technology, technique, now let's go out and see who wants it. We'll put these pretty things on our shelves, invite people to come and look at our shop and see what we can do with them. It's a classic push model. It used to be the way everyone worked. It is still the way many countries work. There's a sort of nice, this is from Japan. The slide before is based on the US model, but it's basically a classic push approach. That's not what we do here. Yes, I know, the rest of it is coming up. I think we have a somewhat better model here, where, first of all our universities have a one-stop shop for industry. The classic US model has licensing on the one side, collaborations on the other side, never the twain shall meet. They're not even under the same auspices within the university. One of the major changes that was put in by, I think one of your successors, it's Weitzman, when he took over at Harvard, was to put it all under one roof. Yeah, that's, but that was his main argument. I spoke to him at the time, and he said that was his main condition, in fact, for taking the job, was that he should have all the business interactions under one roof. We take it for granted. It's not that way around the world. It's very important also because of what was mentioned here before, this constantly growing interest in innovation, the fact that it's an open system, as was said, and people are looking to do things. I can give lots of excellent examples of some wonderful collaborations that started with a very small sponsored research agreement and moved on to spinning out a company, to a collaboration, eventually, in one case that we know well, to an acquisition most recently. But there are a lot of such examples. It's collaborative. It's no longer we do, you buy. The second thing I think works in Israel, works in other places as well, is the ongoing dialogue with the marketplace. Again, it dovetails with what was mentioned before. We interact, we know what the market wants, the market comes to us to look for it. And then I think the third thing is that we do have, and I've worked a lot around the world in recent years, we still have a fairly unique system here where our tech transfers, our commercialization entities are run as companies. They are able to hire and fire their people. They are able to hire people with real business experience, and they are able to harness the knowledge of the marketplace to help them do that. It helps that we own all the IP. It also helps that the revenue sharing is very generous, 40 to 60% in Israel. That's not the standard everywhere around the world. But mostly, having the ability to innovate also within this sphere in a way that I think is unique to Israel. Yisum now has a couple of funds. The Tel Aviv University has the Momentum Fund. These are things that are happening around the world, but they are a lot more difficult to do when you're trying to do it directly within the academic system. There are enough academics in the room who can attest to that. So I wanted to highlight those and then give a thought of where we are going in the future in terms of taking the technology out of the universities. And we're going into a far more interactive, collaborative model where we're looking not just, and the top of this is the classic, if you will, roles of research and education. Coming out of that are the products that move into this economic system in the cycle showing above me, with the green side, as you can see, is the funding, the entrepreneurial resources, and the orange, yellow side is the wealth creation, the jobs. This, if you will, is what those two impact studies were trying to measure. So it gives you, I think, better vision of where the system is going and the role of the university as a key element in creating wealth, in creating knowledge, in creating education, in having an economic impact, in having a social impact, in having an impact on sustainability. We're at the core of all of that's happening around the world now. And one of the most important roles that I think we can all play, and the growing players in this market, are entities that are called commercialization catalysts. And the commercialization catalysts, otherwise known as innovation intermediaries, I prefer the term catalyst because it's more active. Those are the entities that interact with the government, with the university, with the investor, with the marketplace, and they, I think, will play the key role in moving us all forward so that we can harness the very many aspects of university life into the marketplace. And I'll end by telling you a little bit about this. I'll skip, but I do want to tell you something about I'm involved with a non-profit, the International Commercialization Alliance, which aimed to bring together exactly these entities from around the world to share best practices and to see how we can move forward. And what's ongoing now, about 3 months we'll have results, but what is ongoing now is a survey, and hopefully by the time we have this conference again, I'll be able to tell you what we've come up with, to quantify the metrics for success and what we need to do in order to get the system working. There's outreaches to over 1,600 organizations. So far we're seeing two main elements. One is everyone's focused on growth, but then of course everyone measures what they do. The second is the factors that contribute to success, and the one I've highlighted in red, not surprisingly, brings us full circle to the beginning of Yaron's presentation earlier, which is the importance of the ecosystem. And here I think we have a very important role to play. I'll leave you with these thoughts as we progress throughout the day, and I'll be back later this evening to chat over drinks and food.
This program was brought to you by Koller Institute of Venture at Tel Aviv University.